Let's take an agile approach to our on-cloud CRM project. Hey everyone, welcome back to another business analysis video. As part of our live business analysis project example, we have looked at the waterfall aspect, and in high level last video we looked at some instances of adapting the business analysis approach to the agile environment. So let's look at an agile approach to this project. There are stages in an agile project that should be considered when delivering agile projects, right? So first, you might be wondering or asking the question, what the hell is agile? What is an agile environment? Okay, so a company or an organization could support an agile project management or delivery, right? Where, like I mentioned in the last video, stories or requirements are delivered in iterations. Within Agile, the company culture will encourage project teams to adopt the principles and values of the Agile methodology, right? There are 4 pillars of the Agile environment which looks at individual interactions and transparency over processes and tools, as in the waterfall methodology. There's so much you can uncover from learning Agile, but let's look at adopting this Agile project approach to our project. Okay, before we go into the stages, Agile has various methodologies including Scrum, Kanban, RAD. There are so many various methodologies within Agile. However, there are set stages that projects will follow in delivering an Agile project, whatever methodology it is. The first stage is the project initiation, right? This is where we are trying to justify the reason for our project to start, right? Initiating the project. The Agile team generally will collaborate with stakeholders to identify the business needs. What are the problems, right? What do you need? So that we can create these needs into a project. The user needs as well as the requirements, in the case of ours, for our on-cloud CRM system. So the Agile team will create a product vision statement. They will also establish the project goals as well as define the product backlog. And then once we've looked at this project initiation stage, which encompasses a lot of tasks and activities, we will then start to plan our sprints. Now, the second stage of the Agile project is sprint planning, which is literally just a meeting where the Agile team will look at what we have in the product backlog and start to prioritize those features in there. We will also look at estimating the effort it would take to deliver each of these features, and then define our sprint goal. What do we want to achieve in the next 2 weeks? Once we've defined our sprint goal, we will then create a sprint backlog, which is where we are removing a set of features or requirements from our product backlog, which holds all the requirements that we want to deliver for our project. We will remove some. Say there's 100 requirements in product backlog, we'll remove 20 because it's part of our sprint goal. These have already been prioritized as well. We will then use that to create our sprint backlog, a backlog of features to be delivered in our sprint, our current sprint, example 2 weeks. The third stage is the sprint execution. In sprint execution, the Agile team will work on developing the features in the sprint backlog, okay? This is the developers, the techie people, will now start to create and design these requirements. They will use Agile methodologies, whether it's Scrum, whether it's Kanban, whatever Agile methodologies the team are deciding to adopt. They will use this to collaborate on the work, and they will continuously integrate and test the features as they are developed, okay? Now, for the case of our project, we will look at adopting Scrum. But let's complete the stage of Agile before we then look at applying it to a Scrum methodology. Once we've done our sprint execution, we then have a sprint review, which is done at the end of every sprint. our first 2 weeks, right? They will hold a sprint review meeting to demonstrate the features that have been completed in the sprint. They will also gather feedback from stakeholders. Then the team will then use this feedback to adjust the product backlog. So new requirements can come up, changes to the last sprint can come up, right? And then they will make the changes to the project plan if necessary. The fifth stage is the sprint retrospective. Retro, right? We are going back, okay? This is where we reflect. Retro, okay? Try to think of the word. Sprint retrospective, right? The Agile team will reflect on the performance of the team. Remember I said Agile environment is very collaborative, very transparent, right? So we would look at sort of reviewing or reflecting on the performance that we had in the last sprint, as well as in the project during that last sprint. We will identify any areas for improvement, and then we will discuss any way to prioritize the Agile process for the next sprint so that we don't have those impacts that we had on our last sprint going forward. The sixth stage is the deployment stage. This is where we deploy our project. As the features are completed and tested throughout various sprints that we're having, we will deploy them to a production environment going live, right? This will involve coordination with the IT department. A lot of times we need IT department to ensure that the platform is integrated with the company's existing systems, as well as any data migration that needs to be completed. The final stage of the Agile project lifecycle is maintenance. Okay, we need to maintain the system once we have gone live, once we've deployed it. How do we do this? We work closely with the IT department to ensure that it's running smoothly and that any bugs or any issues that have been experienced after deployment are addressed. As much as we are performing these tasks within maintenance, we will also continue to collaborate with stakeholders, the team, mainly business analysts, right? Business analysts generally, to identify any new features or any new requirements for the platform, and then we will then prioritize them again for the future sprints. So these are the stages of the Agile project. Now let's look at the actual Agile approach within Scrum environment. What exactly are we doing really as business analysts here? It's very, very similar to the stages of the project that we just looked at. But before we proceed to looking at the Agile approach to the project after completing the Agile stages of the project, if you'd like to know more in detail about Agile, I have an existing course within the Business Analyst School membership space. If you'd like to join us, click the link in the description box and join the membership to explore various courses and various resources that will help you to transition into business analysis. So taking an Agile approach to the project, what ceremonies do we perform? What tasks, what things, ceremonies, tasks, activities, meetings are we performing within the Agile project? So there are several ceremonies or meetings that are typically performed throughout the Agile project. There is a lot of meetings. Anyway, here are the ceremonies that are performed on our CRM project if we were taking an Agile approach to the project. The first thing is sprint planning. Okay, we have our product backlog already. Okay, through business analysis, investigation techniques, and problem analysis. Okay, we have our requirements. So the sprint planning stage, which we sort of already uncovered at the Agile project lifecycle, the sprint planning is what we do at the beginning of each sprint. Say on Monday morning, we will have a meeting to define the sprint goal. What are we trying to achieve in the next 2 weeks? And then we will now select the user stories from our product backlog to work on during the next 2 weeks. So once we have these in our sprint backlog, all these requirements that we want to deliver in the next 2 weeks, we don't just go away and start working on them and for dev to start designing. We generally will have a daily stand-up meeting every day for 15 minutes in the morning, let's say from 9 a.m. to 9:15 or 9:15 to half 9, whatever the time is that the team decides to hold these daily stand-ups meeting. What are we doing here? We're discussing the progress, we're identifying any obstacles, and then we're planning the work for the day. So what the meeting would generally look at is, what did I do yesterday? What issues and blockers did I experience while I was doing what I was doing yesterday? And what am I doing today? Okay? Like I mentioned, agile environment is very collaborative, very transparent. So everybody within the team will have a few seconds or few minutes to talk about what they're working on in this daily stand-up meeting. And it's called the daily stand-up because the expectation that is that we're standing up during the meeting, and because it's really short, 15 minutes, we don't take too much time, so that we can carry on with our tasks for the day. Now, the third ceremony is the sprint review, another meeting. Now, remember, we do the sprint planning at the start of the sprint, okay? The sprint review is what we do at the end of the sprint. We will hold a sprint review meeting to demonstrate the work that we have completed during this last 2 weeks, during the sprint. And then we will gather feedback from the stakeholders. A lot of time in this sprint review, we will be doing like a demonstration to the stakeholders to say, this is what we've done in the last 2 weeks. If it's a digital project on our CRM, we will show them what we have implemented on our staging environment or our testing environment, to show them how it will look like, or show them prototypes to say, okay, this is it, this is what it looks like, this is what happens when you click here, this is the requirements that you wanted, right? We are showing them, and then we will now gather feedback from that. In gathering those feedback, there could be new requirements, there could be changes to what we've already delivered in that sprint. So that's what happens in the sprint review. We are demonstrating that work and then seeking feedback from the stakeholders to ensure that we are meeting their requirements. Now, the fourth meeting that we have in Agile is the sprint retrospective. Again, retro, we're going back to say, how did we do in the last sprint? Please bear in mind that sprints are not always 2 weeks. It depends on what methodology of Agile you're adopting, and what works best for the project, really. So in this sprint retro, we're reflecting on our previous sprint, and then we're identifying areas for improvement in the next sprint. It's very similar to the daily stand-up, but it's longer because we're now looking at everything over the last sprint. What went well in the last sprint, what didn't go well, and what improvement can we adopt so that we don't make the same mistakes in the next sprint coming in the future sprints. Now, the fifth agile ceremony is the backlog refinement. Technically there are 4, and backlog refinement can be done at any time. Okay, so throughout the project, the team will hold that backlog refinement meeting, and in this one we are trying to review and prioritize what we have in the product backlog. We are just looking at all the user stories, the acceptance criteria, the epics, and just try to refine, make updates to them. A lot of time the business analyst does this, but other members of the team can also join in and refine the backlog. So all these ceremonies that we perform in Agile, they are generally for promoting communication and collaboration, because one aspect of Agile is this collaboration, transparency, communication with the team, with the stakeholders, so that we can ensure that we are delivering the value to the organization in those small incremental steps. In that way, in reviewing this and gathering feedback from stakeholders, we can then adjust the course, learn lessons, and then try to sort of improve the way we are delivering our project. So, you know, in Waterfall we talked about some documentation, some deliverables that the business analyst or other members of the team will produce. Now in Waterfall, some of the documents from the business analyst side is the BRD, business requirements documents. We will also create some reports. There could be other documents around the project as well that are created. However, in Agile Project, there are several artifacts. We call these artifacts documents that are typically produced to facilitate that collaboration and communication, as well as planning. So some examples of these artifacts that can be produced in our CRM project include I already mentioned the product backlog, which holds our user stories, our requirements that are prioritized so that the team can work over the course of the project by delivering these. The product owner is responsible for maintaining the product backlog and ensuring that it aligns with the goals and priorities of the organization. However, the business analyst also does this. A lot of times the business analyst ends up doing this. We already talked about the sprint backlog, which is another artifact within the agile environment. Again, it's a list of user stories and tasks that we will work on during a given sprint. These are generally taken from the product backlog. The team is responsible for creating this sprint backlog during the sprint planning meeting. The user stories, this is what makes up, builds our sprint backlog and our product backlog. These are short, simple descriptions of features or requirements that captures the user's needs, the user's perspectives, the user's requirements. They're used to break down larger requirements into small, manageable pieces that can be completed in a single sprint. We will look at some examples, don't worry, for our project, okay? Now, as part of your user stories, you also need to create your acceptance criteria, which is another artifact. These are a set of conditions that must be met in order for a user story or a requirement to be considered complete. Your definition of done. They're used to define the expected behavior of the system, and they're also used to ensure that the requirements are testable and verifiable, that you can verify them, you can test them. They're just steps to take in order to meet your user story, thereby reaching your definition of done. Another artifact is your sprint burn down chart, okay, which is like a visual representation of the team's progress during a given sprint. It shows the amount of work that is remaining in the sprint backlog, as well as how much work the team have completed each day. This is what the sprint burn down chart will show. You also have the release burn down chart, which is again another visual representation of the team's progress over the course of the project. The burn down chart is over the course of the sprint, whereas the release burn down chart is the representation over the course of the project. It shows the amount of work remaining in the product backlog and how much work the team has completed in each sprint. So these artifacts are designed to provide that transparency and visibility into the team's progress. They facilitate collaboration and communication, and they help the team plan and prioritize their work. I hope you found value in this content. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.